This is the Sacred Knowing of Is video series, interview number 18 with Tisziji Muñoz. I had some questions for you covering chapters 137 through 145. From chapter 137, which is titled Nature Creates, Well, God is of Itself, my question is materialism and egotism a curse, or is it just an effect of something else?
It can be a curse, it can be a blessing. In terms of the spiritual process, you have to use it all. Everything is wood for the fire, so whatever you can name, whatever you can identify, it's all part of the process. In other words, your thought process, your use of language, use of words, concepts, and ideas, all of this is part of the process. Your experiences are part of the process, and all of it has to be transcended. That is to say, not to be stuck in, particularly, not to be doomed by. So it's a curse when you're clinging, but not a curse if you are moving through everything in a more or less gracious manner and with a good sense of humor. Because we are selves. The idea of no self is just to balance out the fact that there is a self, which means, lighten up to a certain degree. Be more than just whatever your self program is. So we have to bring balance to our states of consciousness, to our functioning in the material world, which is actually a spiritual world. You can't really separate the two absolutely. The subtle is in the gross, and the gross and the subtle are both subject to the burn, and transcendence. So we have to be able to handle all of it, but you got to start with the practical, and that's usually from the physical plane to begin with. And that's what we're calling nature. There's physical nature, there's mind nature, so we start there and out from there. So you start from that and then work your way from the inside out to the cosmic and then to the divine in terms of realizing the most fundamental essence that has more to do with the heart than just your mind and experience. So it could be, but we need to transcend all of it in any case for real spiritual practice. Real spiritual practice is tending to the fire itself, not just the things that need to be burned up, but the fire itself. Because we are at source, from the heart viewpoint, we are the fire itself. We are the pure spirit, but we don't live like that. Because we're not guided to live like that, but we can live like that.
Can or does nature reveal God's presence? In other words, does God or the divine express itself through nature?
We can say that God is nature. Nature is God, whatever God is, depending on your school of thought or your tradition. God the Almighty, the total. There's that cosmic sense of God as being transcendent or immanent God, or basic God, as the heart nature. Just being is God, supreme being is God. See, now is God, whatever God is. If we're talking about the most radical sense of openness and expansion, that is God. The infinite is God, and love is God. See, goodness is God. So God is a little bit of everything. Everything is God, and if everything is God, then nothing in particular is God.
In chapter 138, which is titled To Be is Already to Have, is it impossible to be born into this world and from the early beginning of life be free from attachment?
Yes, of course. Yeah, both extremes are possible. Any extremes are possible. So you have those that are born with a predisposition towards renunciation and attachment, as a result of tendencies and progression through the modes of nature from before this time. And you can just awaken from out of your gene pool with a certain kind of already knowing of detachment. It's something that is, we are detached, see. So we are impersonal intelligence. So it's not like you have to learn it. You have to just be able to know what it is, to use it wisely. So it's not about attachment or detachment. It's really about how does one wisely utilize the function the mental function of intelligence in the form of attachment and or detachment. How do we balance out the two? How do we know what to be attached to and how do we know what to be detached from? See, this takes a certain level of unfoldment, creative intelligence, wisdom in some cases, or common sense in other cases. And some people are more aligned with what they have to do, and so they know what to be attached to without thinking about it. It's not a philosophic process for them. And others know what to do and align themselves relative to the spiritual. It's not a mental process, it's just an intuitive knowing. It's the same with arts and sciences and other things that people have a very strong, let's say, knowingness about. They just have to do it. It's just something that is so having to be done that it gets done by itself, and then that's what that is. Free to just do, free to be, let it happen. So we need to practice getting to that place where what is really in us that needs to be done can actually be done by itself. And sometimes that takes either attachment to something or other, attachment to detachment, right? And detachment from attachment.
Also from chapter 138, you write, to have is to give or give up at some time or other. For soul is the only real possession of spirits. The rest belongs to the magic, dream, or phenomena of self, nature, and the world. Are you saying that having is an illusion?
Yes. But even an illusion is an illusion. So an illusion then is not a real thing, nor is having a real thing, but we're saying that in the field of perception, we can feel that we have a body, we have this, we have. That means we can recognize some connection with these things. We have the earth, but do we really have anything, beyond the point? It's a perception of havingness. It's a perception sometimes of owningness, it's a perception of beingness. In some cases, we have a moment here, we have now, we have a life. All of these are basic perceptions, and to what degree you use that as a positive, and it is so, or to whatever degree that's a problem for you, then you're free to experience it as a problem. But then the issue is, do you have intelligence to know how to progress? That's really the question. Do you have the wherewithal, awareness or intelligence to progress so that you accomplish what you know you're here to accomplish without any complications, without any confusion, or without any conflict? See? But everything is a karmic, let's say, program. Everything is a concept, see. Everything is a temporary condition, so everything is basically impermanent. See? It's coming to go. Everything is fleeting. Everything is appearing to disappear. So we have either everything in a sense, but we also have nothing, because that's the nature of the universe. See? Appearance, see? And disappearance. So we have an opportunity now to master our ability to function with what appears to be relative to havingness and what appears to be relative to transcending what it is that we have at the same time. So we are, but we are not. So we come back to the usefulness of the paradox, the in-between, the extremes.
From the end of chapter 138, you write, there is an urgent need for spirits to allow for conscious practical progression towards, into, and beyond the enlightened state of pure awareness. There is always being, doing, and having before, during, and after enlightenment. Why is there an urgent need when it comes to spiritual practice and progression?
That's, let's say, a well understood and well taken view, because you're in time. You're in time and you may be wasting time. You may also be in the dilemma of being in someone else's time, borrowed time, because of a compromise with another person. So you're participating in their time stream, and that could be good, that could be also a problem. So you have to know what is worth your attention and worth your compromise, if you have that kind of intelligence or perception. Some things feel right, so you know that certain relationships or certain compromises work for you up to a point, then what? So we have to be aware of what it is that we need to get free of in order to accomplish what we feel is our mission relative to either enlightenment or just being here now. Enlightenment's a word. It could be useful, but just being at peace here and now, or being stressed. Being stressed is also part of the enlightenment process, because you need to know what you need to know, and you need to know all your conditions. And then you need to, at some point, be released from all of your conditions. And maybe the release, or maybe the attachment is enlightenment. Maybe both are, and maybe neither are. So we have to figure out exactly where we are and what we need. And be open to being beyond what it is that we appear to be trapped in. Because the only thing you can be trapped in is a mind that just doesn't understand its own function.
Do one's concepts of being, doing, and having differ or change before, during, and after enlightenment? And if so, how?
Well, they may not change. Being is still being, doing is still doing, having is still having, but there may be less attachment, there may be more intelligence in terms of using that to your advantage, say creatively, or to the advantage of other peeps, in terms of service. So it's up to the fundamental intelligence of the individual and where they are with what they have, see, what they have created for themselves, or what they've agreed to use, or whatever the karmic situation may be that you're in, or condition, and how to gracefully manage that so that there's some sense of peace, see, some sense of nothingness, emptiness, zeroness, okayness, see, instead of torture, see, grief, suffering. I think it's already understood that we can function a lot more if we're not under the delusion of suffering or the condition of suffering, intense pain. See? So there has to be some relief from that. Some of that can be brought about by our mental attitudes, our spiritual practice of consciously undoing and releasing ourselves from neurosis and stress that are more or less created out of our identificational programs. So we identify ourselves beyond the point, so we suffer that. So we have to let go of things and learn a lesson from our experience of sleeping and awakening. So that, there's a time to awaken from all of it. Are we awakened from it yet? That's a good question. Right.
From chapter 139, you write, "For others, a delusion may arise where the ego self may seek to use death for its own selfish purpose, and in the process of taking its own life to hurt others, solidifies its own self-indulgent attachment to the body to the degree where, instead of gracefully passing through the phase of death, generates for itself a greater karma of self or ego reactivity to death, thereby guaranteeing its continual or persisting existence in the illusory birth and death and rebirth cycle. Therefore, unless one has a fully cooperative disposition towards the death process, no real enlightenment or liberation from the clinging and suffering of the body-mind's self and ignorance is realized up to and through the initiation of the death process or phase of life." Is the act of suicide always considered a selfish act, or can it be, under certain circumstances, seen as a selfless act?
It can be seen as a selfless act under certain conditions. I think we've touched upon this in different ways throughout this course or this series of, I guess we call them moral concerns and issues that we can discuss, but not really know beyond the veil of, let's say, thinking. And for sure, we can. No, we're not in the other person's state. We are not in their shoes, as my mother would say. So you don't know until you're in their shoes. You have to walk their path. So it's hard to say. We can assume. But there are those who willingly give up their lives, as Jesus and others have said, in the spirit of helping other beings. And you see that in law enforcement. You see that in the military. You see that in the medical services. You see that in the case of firemen and other public servants, where they are the front lines, and they take responsibility for putting themselves in the line of harm, say, and injury, and even to the degree of death. So that kind of heroic, let's say, quality could be seen as suicidal in a manner of speaking, but it's the quality of the warrior, and the warrior is willing to do that. So we have to say that takes a certain amount of courage and heart to do that. And glory be to the person that can do that with dignity and stand up and take what it is, take it and go beyond themselves and their fear. So this is a good quality, but the case for heroism, which is kind of like a conscious, not so much an act of suicide, but a conscious sacrifice, see, for the sake of helping and saving others. And not even thinking about it, just acting, just doing it. I know what that's like. See, you just do it. You have to do it. It's not like you have an opportunity to sit around and think about it. No, there's the impulse of survival, see, and save, and it's powerful. And not everybody connects with that, but there are some who have that in them. This kind of direct line to this urgency, functioning. But that in itself is not an act of what we would call suicide. Has a relatively different quality to it, where you're not concerned about saving anybody else. You're really not caring that much about anybody else. Maybe you want to hurt other people. Maybe you want to do the opposite. You want to do people in with suicide. You want to do yourself in. And that's not necessarily an act of heroism particularly, see. And there are those who may be deluded enough to think, which I haven't had direct experience with, that, well, if they take their lives, they're helping everybody else out. Now, that's perhaps a super subjective assumption, and maybe it's a delusion that you're helping other people out. Maybe, see, we don't know that for sure. But I think the motive is very different when we're talking about heroism. You're really for life. With suicide, I think the motivation is definitely about death and giving up and quitting and destroying and hurting and not caring. So it's heartless in some cases, although it might be harmful. And we're also not talking about those who want to, because of extreme pain, want to be taken out. I think that's a different matter altogether, but we're not discussing that right now. Continue.
Is self-indulgence and non-discipline a form of suicide for some?
Well, we can say that in certain kind of use of language. Yeah, we can acknowledge that self-indulgence, up to a point, maybe beyond the point, could be a form of self-destruction. We're saying self-destruction, not just suicide, different motivation, but similar results. So we can say that. So, yeah, we can say that self-indulgence and non-discipline and being careless about what happens to your body and overeating, over-drinking, these kinds of things where you don't have the intelligence to know better, perhaps, but maybe you even know better, and then you're even more culprit, more, let's say, responsible for what you're imposing upon other people. So we're talking about intelligence and deliberate acts of disrespect and disregard of the feelings and maybe the integrity and lives of other peeps in the process. This is also the case with people who know they shouldn't drink and they're driving cars. And they have to drive other peeps, but they drink anyway. But they don't admit they drink, but they're drinking, see, or they have to drink, and then, they have problems, see. So this is a very, very typical human issue, but we're talking about self-discipline in the spirit of being compassionate towards other peeps and caring for others even more than oneself, see. That's an act of heart, and we're talking about, let's say, an act of heart, then.
Could such beings who lead undisciplined lifestyles or unhealthy lifestyles subconsciously have a death wish?
Yeah, definitely. I think we all have a wish for death, and it takes different shapes and forms. But we're not talking about the same kind of death. We're not talking about necessarily physical death. See? We want to die. We want to go beyond. We want some things to end. See. We want to die as a self, and I think in the ancient teachings it says you have to die daily. It means you have to let go of your suffering, what is obviously self-killing, and killing of other peeps. See? That means living from the smallest level of heart consciousness, see? Selfishly. And so we need to be able to die relative to letting go of darkness and suffering that beyond the point serves no real purpose. See? And so that is what creative death really implies, saying, yeah, letting go of what we've already done and known, that makes room for what we need to do and opens the channels up for possibility through inspiration, see, and creative actions to improve rather than to destroy.
Would causing or encouraging someone to commit suicide, whether through conscious or unconscious acts or words, be considered a form of murder?
It could be. What is the power of a word? See? A word can kill. Bad words can kill some people, so make people feel like they're so worthless. So we know people can be beaten down by words. We see it in the case of women all the time. See? Mothers who are beaten down. Same by husbands. And both ways, it works both ways. Some women will beat you down and some men will beat you down because they don't know any better. You know? They don't have the heart to be beyond that particularly. They don't have the training, they don't have the will to do that. See? They don't have the soul value to lift themselves up. They don't have it in them. See? So they have to turn to some place to get that so that they can stop killing people with their words and stop killing people with their harsh feelings and their darkness, because darkness kills, ignorance kills. It's not just, words. See, it's being. See, it's feelings. See? So we have to be completely responsible from the inside out for our darknesses and for our relationship to the light. If we have any sense of what the light is in terms of positive energy. So, another question you have, I think you have more questions on that.
Well, would the karmic debt of the persons responsible in such a case, would it be as severe as if they had killed the person directly?
Well, depending on the context. I mean, I think in a court of law, they'll take everything into account. I mean, you can condition a kid to kill itself by your words and your behavior. And its self-destruction is totally logical. I mean, the child may have no choice, in a sense, because they're programming as such. Very seldom do you have children that strong where they can counter the darknesses that they're born into because of culture, because of circumstances, beyond their control, what they're brought into, see. And so, yeah, we can kill each other with our bad feelings, there's no question about it. And are we guilty? Yes, we are guilty. Are we contributing to cause of death? Yes, we are doing that. And so can we be punished? Yes, we should be punished. If it's found that we contributed, we pushed them, then I think that's part of our culpability. Comment?
What if such a case is due to an ignorant religious or cultural belief?
No excuse. The result, we're talking then, is all that is of interest to people of sanity. So what the result is, not the excuse. See, what the result is. See. All things considered in a court of law again, but the results are all that matters in this case. Yeah. And of course, we have to look into every individual case very specifically in terms of states of mind. People are just damaged goods, damaged because they're not part of an enlightened society. See, there's no commitment to any sense of enlightened society. There's this just be out for yourself and self-rules, and that's not always a path of wisdom, and that's not necessarily always what enlightenment means. See? So we have to go deeper. We have to open our minds up to other levels of reality, other levels of solutions, other levels of operating, in life and with one another, and as parents and as children. How do we bring the heart into its proper functioning in the world? Goodness and kindness. How do we get that up and running universally? How can we get that up and running when we're confronted with so much demonic darkness? How many Gandhis are out there? Right? How many Jesuses are out there, in fact, to lead the way, in a certain manner of speaking. So, not too many. Coming.
Can committing suicide in one life result in self-destructive tendencies in the next lifetime?
Yes. That is so.